All right. Well, hello, logic and coding class. Well, first, I just want to say that I do miss all of you. And under these strange circumstances, I'm grateful at least that I get to greet you through this video of a Turing machine example. So, yay, let's take a look at what this is. And even though we have seen what Turing machines are in previous lessons, I feel like it doesn't really hit home at what they are until you actually see one in process, until you actually see an example that's kind of stepped through. So let's take a look at what we have here. I tried to pick an easy example for this first one. You can see it only has two states, a state that tells it to go to the right along the memory tape, and here's the memory tape down here, and then another state that tells it to go to the left along the memory tape. And then there are all of these state transitions that tell it how to advance and under what circumstances to advance. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the memory tape. What do we see? We have a lot of blank spaces here. That's what these pound signs are supposed to be. They're just supposed to represent a blank space in memory. We imagine there is an infinite tape, so there's an infinite amount of blank spaces to the left and an infinite amount of blank spaces to the right, and then some initial value that we're given, and here we're given 0. Okay, so I could describe what this Turing machine does, but I think it's actually possible just to watch it and see what it does, and maybe you can figure out what it's supposed to do. So I'll just press play, and then we'll pause it and go into more detail about what's happening in it. Okay, so here it goes. And you can see now it's just kind of looping all over the place and doing all of these jumps. But if you look down here at the memory view, you can see it's printing out a bunch of ones and zeros. And can you tell what it's doing? So this Turing machine has been designed in such a way that it's just counting up in binary. It's just printing all of the binary numbers in succession. Okay, so that's what it is. It's just a simple binary adder. I've stopped it now and I've reset it so that we can kind of step through it and see how it's actually working. Okay, a Turing machine will have an initial state, and that's this one that's highlighted here in gold. And it will also have an initial setting. So it will have a given input, in this case it's 0, and it will have a given space on the memory tape where we imagine that the print head in the reader is beginning on, and that's this one that's also highlighted in gold. Okay, so what is it going to do? So if we're starting here, we look at all of the state transitions that are available to us, and we see that there's only one. Only this arrow is available. And what this is basically saying here is that if it sees a blank space, it's going to replace it with a blank space, and then follow this arrow to this next state. So right now, it sees a 0. So it's not going to follow this state transition because it doesn't see a blank space. So what does it do if it can't follow a state transition? If it can't follow a state transition, it's just going to go back to its own state. It's going to follow this instruction that's printed here, which says go to the right along the tape. So if I press next, that's what's going to happen. We're just going to see this memory tape advance 1 to the right, and then it will be here. Okay, so let's watch that happen. Okay, so there it has just advanced to the right. Okay, now the state transition is available to it. So again, what this is saying is if it sees a blank space, it can replace it with a blank space and then go to this state. So basically what that means is just ignore the symbol there, right? You see a blank space, you replace it with a blank space. This is just a way to have it leave what's already written on the tape there and then just transition to a new state. Okay, and that's what happened. And as soon as it lands on this, it tells it to immediately go to the left. Okay, and that's what it did. It just went back to the 0. Okay, now we're kind of paused on this state, and we can see what are the options available to us now. Can we follow this path, or can we follow this path, or can we follow this path? Well, it will only follow this one if it sees a blank space. And does it see a blank space? No, it sees 0. So it's going to follow this one. If it sees a 0, it can replace that 0 with a 1. So it's going to do that, and then it's immediately going to go to the right. The other state transition available to it is if it sees a 1, it can replace it with a 0, and then go back to that same state and go to the left. Okay, but as we already determined, it's going to follow this path. So let's see that happen. It's going to replace the 0 with a 1, and then it hit this, so it immediately goes to the right. Okay, what is it going to do now? Well, now it sees a blank space. It will replace it with a blank space, and then immediately go to the left. Okay, now what's going to happen? It sees a 1 in this case, so it's not going to follow any of these options. It's going to follow this option. it's going to see a 1 and replace it with a 0, and then go to the left again. Okay, now what will happen? It sees a blank space, so it's going to replace it with a 1 and then go to the right. Okay, so we've just slowly tracked through this Turing machine following 2 loops of it, and you can see that on the memory it now has a 2 in binary. It has 1, 0, okay, which is the number 2. If we follow this one more time, we can see that it will just add another 1 to this tape. So what's it going to do from here? Right now, it doesn't see any state that it can transition through. It doesn't see a blank space. It sees a 0. So it doesn't have any option except to go to the right, and that's what it's going to do. Okay, see, it went to the right. Now it sees a blank space. It can transition along this path. It goes to the left. Now that it sees a 0, it can replace that 0 with a 1 and follow this arrow. Okay, so that was just a quick look at this simple counter. Now you can see it's counted up to 3, and we can keep running it as you saw, and it will just keep increasing following this simple recipe or this simple design. All right, I hope that example was clear. I feel like they will be more clear as we see more complicated examples, though. This one is almost so simple that it might be a little bit unclear right now as to how this type of thing works in general. So yeah, see me in the next video and we'll look at a more complicated example. Thank you for watching.